Boom. That should have done it. I do believe I'm live. Please take care of my paranoia. Did anybody hear me and see me? Y'all know I still suffer from PTSD from that one day that nobody could hear me for 2 hours. That'll be forever, permanently. I can't seem to remove the negative identity that happened with that, the trauma. Anyway, everybody hear me? Joyce Hartman, Anne Marie, A. Marie, Kyle Smith. Can you hear me, Kyle? That must be boom. That must be yes. I can hear you. Thank you. Roger Blair. Thank you. Sunfire Goddess. Thank you. Tamara. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Very, very cool. I announced this kind of late, so I wasn't sure if anybody would really show up. So thank you for all for coming. You know, I can say honestly that I never thought that any of this would go this far. Not me doing lives. I was so against doing lives for years. And I just had done these fast blast videos that I felt were pretty informative, but these lives have been really cool. I get to interact with people. I didn't think anybody would listen to them, but a few people are. So thank you all that listen or being here and pass them on. Hit the button. Thank you. Much respect. Recently, I pissed a few people off. You know, I've had a few people come at me and look, I'm just not that brother really. And I'm not getting paid for anything. So I'm not being paid to argue with fools. And that's what that comes down to sometimes. Sometimes I'll get suckered in and I start doing what we used to do. And my cousins and I, we shoot the dozens and stuff, you know, I'll tear you up. So I should probably do that. So a few people are probably pissed off, but they can all line up and I'll bend over and each one of them can kiss my ASS. But that's just how that is. But for all y'all that came here that know that really this is about just, I think, spreading a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of information. And it's cool because by no means am I special or even just maybe unique, but every contactee and experiencer is, because we've all got a part of this. You know what I mean? And that way I'm not unique at all. I have always said that, you know, that I thought over about 80% of our population was contactees and didn't know it. And so far, excuse me, there's nothing I've seen to disprove that. So anyway, going forward, like I said, appreciate each one of you being here. And this is a topic I think will tie some things in together. And this probably won't be a real long one, just in terms of, I've got a little outline, some things that I'll show. And I'll start with my actual experience that would be something concerning virtual reality. And that's what they had called it then to me. But I think now that we can start turning that into an AI type of concept. So I know that's a hot topic right now. So we'll go into that a little bit. I'll go over here to the chat, acknowledge everybody. Jonah Side, Kyle Smith, thank you for being here, everybody. Ron, thank you. Appreciate you all. So let's see. We'll start this from the aspect of contact, all right? And how much I think that just with what our knowledge of what they're calling artificial intelligence now, how it's evolving, you know, it's evolving into the neural programming, into the type of another way this is going down. It's not just simple robotics anymore. You know, we're dealing with advanced neural programming and things that's happened like that I think that makes this worth looking into. And we'll just start with my experience, I guess. And might I say that when this happened to me, although it was positive experience, it really tripped me out. Okay. And I mean that just as far as it tripped me out in terms of what information I was given during the experience concerning virtual reality scenario technology. And then also, you know, what I was able to discover later about it, the people that were actually talking about that at that time. And that would have been Carla Turner, and that tripped me out too. So we'll kind of go into that, and I'll go into the experience and tell you just a little bit about that. I have a couple illustrations. I'll show those, and we'll just kind of walk through this. It ties into a few things. I think ties into this plasma and some other things that we've talked about. So we'll kind of go with that. This would have been in my what I call adult onset experiences. The second one that I had. All right. And this experience, somebody else was with me. And we had tried to go to these places and like reproduce some type of a contact experience, but it never worked outside of the first time that this incredible deal happened out there. Okay. So this I had a type of awakening this night. It was just interesting. I mean, I won't even go through the paranormal thing that happened to me before the encounter, but something happened before that that had me really illuminated, feeling that higher energy, the higher vibration we do. And the other person had told me that we should probably try to go out to the spot because it felt like that when it happened, you know? So going out there, they're all these, they're like, as it's out of town and you start getting to this country dirt roads that lead to this pond, there's like a ship. And I'm driving, there's like deer jumping in the road, so I can't really like focus on it too much. But the individual keeps pointing at it. And then when I can see when I'm driving to my glances a little, I see what looks like yellow and red lights maybe flashing off this thing. Okay, and then we get to the pond and park, and the craft is gone. Don't see it anymore. And that was, somewhat weird considering it was following us all the way out there at a certain point. But then we get there, it's not like we're not seeing anything. And this is the instant where I became hyper aware of these fireflies everywhere. And there were so many fireflies, for the fireflies, for the most parts, the females don't fly as much. They tend to crawl up on the trees and be more stationary, but it's the men that are flying and flashing more. So there were just literally, like I say, it got hundreds of them flying, flashing, and the trees were flashing. If you've ever seen the way it looks in the Amazon when the trees flash, boom, 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 and would this preceded this experience. And that's why I tell people I have 100% no doubt that the lightning bugs know about the light ships. That's just the way it is. There's some sort of connection there. So anyway, because I remember telling the individual, there's no crap. Well, maybe it's about these fireflies this time or something. And this is something that made me take a special deep interest in the work of John Vivinco and what his remote viewing, remote hemispheric remote viewing, I think it's called. Anyway, they had done that target, and we talked about that on on my channel here. It's under the ASETI or interviews, both of them, playlist, but it's the one where him and I are sitting over there talking. Anyway, point being, one of the targets he had for his team were these unique fireflies in, like, where was it, South America or something like that. And I think they had disappeared or something. He gave a reason on there exactly why they chose this as a target. Like there was a paranormal, something with these fireflies. And when they got this remote viewing data, his team had said that these fireflies that were being these odd ones that were being seen were like from another dimension, another planet, but another dimension also. And that they had sent some of their like brethren here to breed into the forest there, like the rainforest. And it's one of those, wherever it was, it's one of the rainforests that got burned up mostly. And this type of firefly got eradicated. So these other fireflies were coming through to investigate what happened to the progeny that they put here. Okay, that's where that's information from John Vivinco. So you can look that up. Like I said, this channel, go to interviews or go to the ASETI playlist and look at the one that him and I up there talking. So anyway, that's the reason why I took a special interest in that, because I know that there's a connection between the light beings and the fireflies from this experience here. Okay. Then when sitting here, so the only thing I know to initiate some type of a contact is to go into a meditative state and kind of reach out. And I was doing it back then. And this year would have been 1995. Okay. I keep thinking it was 94 or 95, but I think it was 95. All right. Anyway, point being, so I started trying to do that. And it begins back then, especially with like an inward revolution, meditation wise. And I remember feeling the buzz of those craft, okay, very strongly. And then kind of opening up my eyes and looking, and other individuals looking at me saying, did something just happen? Were we just somewhere or something? I said, I don't know. It was very bizarre. Then it happens again, okay? And it takes a second. It's like I'm going almost like, I want to say blissed out, but it's like when you go into that, like almost you start feeling elated in a way. I felt like that, okay? And when I open my eyes back up and I feel like something's like coming around me, like I'm being engulfed, okay? And this is what I'm trying to describe to you is what happens when you can have contact with what can be termed a pure conscious craft. And when that takes us back into things like in the Bhagavad Gita and take place, and they're talking about conscious craft. The Hindus are talking about it too. So this is very, very important, pure conscious craft. And when this is what we're talking about, when one of these apps actually materializes around you, as opposed to beaming you up or doing something like we would think in the terms of sci-fi, when the craft actually manifests around you, around your biofield, around your luminous cocoon. Okay, that's what happened. And I find myself in this room. And it's this room that I'll show you the illustration of and why, what I was told during it. And look, I trip out all the time. When this stuff happens to me, I have 1,000 questions and they start getting answered before I can think of them sometimes. And this was odd. This room was odd in terms I feel that type of sickness in there, okay, that I've described when being on these craft. And it's really pretty strong. And then something happens. And so let me pull up the illustration, or attempt to. Let's see if I can. There it is. There it is. All right. And this illustration done for me by Christine Dennett. You know, I must say, you know, I've had a few people tell me, oh, you should use the new AI programs. You know, that this, when she did this for me, this was in 2012. She did most of my sketches for me like 2012, 13, 14, but especially 2012. So that was a long time ago. And it was, I'm proud that she was able to get it to this specific from what I was trying to actually illustrate what happened to me. Okay, so when I open my eyes, I'm looking around, but this room, I feel very disoriented. It's like it's blue, very blue in this room. All right, now comes from down above is this big helmet thing. And with it separately came this like oxygen thing. Okay, I mean, it seemed like that was a mask. And it seemed very odd because this thing was way too big for my head. And there's this thing behind me that looks like some type of a device in this room. It's kind of big. And, you know, when I look for things that are like representations, there's a thing that was on the original Star Trek series called Nomad. And it was this satellite thing that was like all messed up. But anyway, this thing kind of was shaped like that. I mean, not exactly, but it just reminded me that. So I don't know, you know, was it a robot? Was it a sentient? I don't know. But this thing, they start, because as it's coming down, I have questions. What is this? But it's telepathic communication, and I'm being told it's a synaptic helmet. That's what they call it, the synaptic helmet. And I'm getting this information being telepathically saying that it's needed, so I will have a frame of reference for the contact, okay, for the experience. A frame of reference, meaning that I think some of the things, and as far as material and as what they really are in their present state, is beyond our ability to comprehend, and especially having contact with such. So we have to be able to put it in forms and things that we can understand. So I believe that's what this thing was. Okay. It comes down, this thing clicks on, and this lasts for I don't know, it's a little bit. I mean, I did not feel up, but now knowing what I know about what I call temporal aphasia, what those beings call temporal aphasia that I've talked to you about on other experiences, I think that mask was something to do with help with that. Okay, and this didn't stay on me. After a while, it clicked, like pulled up and went off, and I find myself in another room. But before I do any of that, we talk about the other room. There's 2 other rooms on this craft I went to. All right, but this one here is the one that I want to talk about because it references what we would call virtual reality. And what I was getting was that virtual reality is what they were using for me to have a frame of reference. And that's what this synaptic helmet was doing. Now, back then in 95, virtual reality, virtual reality scenario technology is kind of what they're putting in my mind, but it was a step further than what I've seen, because back then in 95, virtual reality was still pretty new. I mean, there was a thing at the mall you could go to look like this big boat. You could go stand in that big boat and put on like these big old goggles and this thing, and it would shake back and forth, and it looked like you were like somewhere else, but it was pretty cheesy. I mean, it wasn't anything like even what they have the headsets now. But it took like $25 or something, and it was kind of not that great. There's a line of people out there for that thing. Anyway, anyone around my age will remember that. Anyway, that's excuse me. Anyway, so I'm getting, that this is, so I have a frame of reference during the contact. Okay, and also that, there's virtual reality involved in this, and that's what this technology is involved with. Then I start getting warned that other beings that would take other intelligences of a lower vibration probably have taken this type of technology and have twisted it to trick people, not for just frame of reference, but to deceive people. Okay, I got that distinctively, and to be very careful. All right, so that's something that tripped me out too about this experience. And I'm actually going to stop sharing this, and I'm going to actually show you something that's I'm always looking for reference things. All right, and I've got a couple of things here I want to take you over. And I've got several different pictures, but due to my inability, I don't know how many of them they'll show, but just so you get a good reference for what I'm actually talking about. Okay, something I'm looking for, frame of reference things in both entertainment and in legitimate science that's going on. All right. Okay, this thing right here, you should be able to see that. This right here is a Keshe, Keshe, healing plasma helmet thing. Okay. And I've seen some different variations of it. And what this is based on is this plasma technology that they tend to call GANS, GANS. All right. And what it's really being harnessed by are these copper wires that are nano coated. Okay, these spiral copper wires that are nano coated, and the nano coating is like a type of a graphene or a silica, something like that. But anyway, that's what they do, and this is being used to harness this plasma from these GANs plasma from these coils, nano coated. And it's interesting in terms of, I have another picture of the individual that I am not cool with anymore was trying to use one of these, and actually I've got blueprints for them too, and I got to find them. I don't one of those flash drives. I got blueprints for one that's a little bit more advanced than this. Okay, but anyway, but this is just things when I say I'm looking for similarities. And and the individual that tried it told me that they got a certain elation out of it and clarity out of it when they used it. Okay, and this goes into here. I've got some other stuff to show you guys and keep cooking with the pictures. It's a good deal. Let's see. And this right here is just somebody actually using the GANs. And there's like these plasma generator things that are near it also, and you'll see a deal with that I think is worth looking at too here. There you go. That's somebody using it. And the person that I know that I told you about, they used one similar to this. And there's other like plasma generators that are attached to that thing in those little booth things and those like kind of the middle there. And they're connected to the helmet there, which the helmet, like I said, is these coils, these copper coils that are nano coated, okay, to gather this GANs plasma. Yeah, so these are getting apparently more advanced. This was years ago that even I got hip to this, but it's just something that's a similarity, and all that is by the Keshe Foundation, KESHE. They had all sorts of plasma stuff that they were doing that didn't seem to materialize, especially when they asked the people in the free energy movement what happened. How come none of that stuff seemed to come to fruition? Because a lot of this stuff here are other people that are taking the schematics and going further with it. So something else I think really worth showing too. Bear with me, because I think this stuff like this that it makes it is worthy of us knowing and discussing. I think because it's not always so mainstream, but for some of us, we're aware of these things. So here's something else that just goes along with this. These were these GANs pins. Okay, the same technology basically. You've got these coils that are these copper coils that are nano coated. Okay, and that's in these pins that people were using, and they said that they got like really a great vibrational feeling off of using these pins and stuff like that. But it's the same technology still as concerning with the nano coated copper wires to get the GANs energy. So I just thought it was worthy of showing this. There was, when I was at that Ascetti Ranch, there was this cat there, and his wife, can't remember his name now, but they called him the GANs man because they had these necklaces that they were given, and they had also chairs and some other things. Interesting. I tried one of them. It is interesting. I can't say I had a great experience with it. It was just interesting. You know what I mean? But it was several things they had that they were doing. So it's interesting, just in terms of when I'm looking for just some type of similarities, this is stuff that comes up. So that's the plasma pin. This stuff you can look up, and I've got, like I said, and I'll have to find the flash drive, but I've got actually blueprints for these two. And I'll share them with some people on my Patreon or something. I just got to find them. Anyway, okay. So that's the first part I really want to kind of express on this. And if there's a picture of Nomad I could show that would kind of show you what that device in the back looked like, but I think the illustration will probably do enough for that. All right. Going into the next room on board this craft was full of these like wormholes. All right, and I'll show you that illustration. And just understanding that this room was extremely, I know now dimensionally, I think unstable to a degree. And what it was this room was like there was a big black beam, a spiral beam in the middle. I remember going next, kind of almost holding this beam so I wouldn't be quite so dizzy. But all in this room, what looked like were these small apertures opening up. These almost swirly looking type of, like you would call them portals, all right? Opening and closing all over this room. All right, I mean, really quick. And at one point, here, let me just show this. So I'm talking too much. This is not one of the illustrations I could get more as effective, just due to it was hard to represent it to her. You know what I mean? But anyway, boom, boom. And I thought this was like a bridge. That's what it felt like to me, like a control room or center. And what happened is these things would open and close all over the room. I mean, there had to have been 12 of them. And when you look at them, they look like distortions. So you get kind of sick to the stomach when you're looking at them. And they felt like off, and something jumps in front of me that looks like this, it's like a pink, orangish energy ball, okay? And it starts unfolding like almost a flower on the floor. And then it goes up and it jumps into one of these portals that one opens and closes. And it comes out of another one on the other side of the room, like almost instantaneously. Okay. And I'm picking up, they're putting in my mind that we're like fish out of water in your dimension, in your density. Okay. And this particular experience is one that Rudy Shields took a really big interest in. Okay. And one of the things that had him starting to want to talk. And it's the fact that he thought that, okay, this is what he was saying. I can't disagree with his analogy, as he's not a contactee or experiencer. All right. He said that he believed that this craft was one of those craft that were capable of actually projecting and forming its own makos and choosing the one for most coherent path. And if that's what this is, as far as a multi-dimensional ship, and you're dealing with those different realms in that way. So that, you know, these different black holes, makos, and you've got a ship that's actually generating those. So anyway, it's a, you know, hey, it is what it is. Like I said, it felt like a control room to me, but that's not what we would think of as a control room. But when you're dealing with things that are working almost like brain neurons and things of that nature, you know, it's a whole nother, it's everything's off. You know what I mean? But anyway, I wanted to just show that to you. So that's so I call this like the wormhole bridge. I don't know what else to call it, man. But I'll tell you one thing. I'm good not being in a wormhole bridge, because wormhole bridge made me want to puke bad. I was holding on to that thing like it was a merry-go-round. I mean, it's got that kind of feeling, you know what I mean? But it's just I think it's being almost in between vibrations, dimensions, in a place that's just enough that can still support us, but support this life from other realms as well. But I think it's not exactly conducive to health. All right. That leaving that room and going to another. All right, and I'll show you that the last sketch that I have concerning this craft, and we'll go on kind of to a little bit more elaborate discussion here. This is actually going much better than I thought in terms of my poor ability to. All right. And to be honest with you, this is one of the deals where really I kind of wanted to get out of that other room. And it's a situation where you go into another, like you almost, I don't want to say materialize, like you're sucked into another room. It's not the process of walking somewhere like we do here. It's like some of the rooms almost materialize around you. All right. This is the final room on board this craft that I was in. And to me, this seemed like much more like a cave with the, oh no, here I go. Is it the stalagmites or is it the stalactites? Either or, the ones that are going down. On the end of them, they had these cocoon things. Okay, these honeycomb looking things. And they weren't quite as oval as what I had seen on board that morphing organic UFO. But these look more almost, they had a cocoon feeling to them, honeycomb like. And again, you've got the hexagon. And, it takes us in the honeycomb conjecture, why the bees use the hexagon to store their energy. And this is that life energy. Okay, what I would see is these straps of light on one of them. In fact, I've got another illustration that maybe has that different. I think I pulled up the wrong one here. It don't matter. This is good enough. Anyway, point B, I would see these strips of light that would go across it, and then materialized out was this type of light being. Okay, and that's pretty good representation. But these things were golden, and these beings were golden as well. And to me, honestly, they had a humanoid form, although they were not human. And they looked to me a lot like, if you've seen the movie Cocoon, when they drop their skin, they look similar to that to me. And someone like Susan Manwich has seen these beings too. She talks about them. I've talked to many people that have seen beings like this. And again, I'm being told also that this is for a frame of reference so I can understand, what I'm probably for them to just communicate in that way. But that this is again that AGLE type of biopolarized light that I've talked about. And this is in fact, I'll probably show maybe a picture of that too. This hexagon material, there's a company called Hexcel. And Hexcel years ago, that's been about 15 years ago, made a honeycomb composite that was lightning resistant for the inside of aircraft. And I became very fascinated with my friend Bill Spicer, who wrote that book, Fast Movers with Margie Kay. And he's got something that he calls the quantum observation technique, which is where he, in fact, maybe I'll get Bill come on here sometime or something. Since apparently this is like becoming a show, I think. But he was aware of that composite. He's the designer for the interior of planes, as well as being a contactee. But so that composite, in fact, let's see if maybe I can show one here in a minute. Here, well, since I'm mentioning it. Anyway, so this point being, this is the honeycomb again. It's just another situation where this seemed to be a very much an organic type room. All right. So let's see. See if I can find one of these to show you real quick. Just so it doesn't, I've done videos, but I guess it's a little different when I'm actually can. Here we go. Found it. Boom. All right. And this is just for reference so people know. I guess somehow it gives me emotional I guess security. I'm not completely cooked. You know what I mean? This is from the Hexcel company. Okay, HEXCEL honeycomb composite. All right, and it just very much reminds me of those things. And remember that the one I saw on that craft on the gyroscopic thing, it looked like really this, but it almost looked like C60, what we would call C60 now, a fullerene. I've done some videos on that too. And I'm saying these are things that we're dealing with, where we're dealing with materials and energies that are really coming from other dimensions and other universes or whatever the case is. Okay. So that's what I'm trying to share with you there. That's one of the, that's just something anybody can look up. Hexcel honeycomb composites. You know, after I did those videos, I actually got contacted by a few people that said they worked for Hexcel. And it was just really cool you're mentioning that. And I asked a few questions and they like disappeared. I mean, no more emails, like email address they working for, nothing. But they said they worked there. And I honestly don't have any reason to disbelieve that. Okay. All right. Now I'm gonna look at my little outline to see how far I've not gone. Okay, so when this happened to me, specifically the helmet thing really stuck out to me as well. Okay. And look, being it that I'm a paranoid brother, and the further you get from the event horizons of the experience like that, the more fragmented it becomes. The harder it is to retain the event horizon, the further you get away from it time wise. And that's something I struggled with a lot when I was younger, because I would be thinking, damn, maybe they wiped my mind. You know, and like I said before, I grew up this was happening to me in the air capital of the world, where people laugh because they don't know really where that is. But the truth is, there's a huge Air Force base on the other side of our town. So I was thinking, man, you know, did I get, I would sound like Rod Truth Killings. Did I get got? Did I get got by somebody on that base, or did they hit me with something, or did I get kid? You know, stuff like that was all going through my mind. Okay. Then I start looking into it, and the fact that these beings had told me during this experience that this virtual reality scenario technology was used to deceive people and be careful, that tripped me out. Okay. And I'd had another experience with a being that seemed to be able to bilocate me optically. And we'll talk about that a little bit in a moment too, because we've already talked about it in another one. That was the mother of the hybrids thing. Excuse me. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But that is, so it just tripped me up, and I tripped out. So I started trying to research anything that had to do with virtual reality scenario, like the technology of it. And like I said, 95, 90, 94 to 96, it wasn't anything like what we know now. But when I started coming across material of somebody talking about it, it was this individual. And I will pull their picture up. Oh, I thought it'd be right there. I'll get it. Boom. All right. When I started really looking in, and the person that I found that was talking about, and I've got pictures of they've got pictures, but I'll just tell you the other ones that they did so you can look it up instead of waiting for me to show you this. Right here, Carla Turner. Okay, this is one of her books, Masquerade of Angels. She's got another one that's called Into the Fringe, and another one called Taken. And Taken was used and converted into a mini series for the Sci-Fi Channel. Matter of fact, it starred that cat from General Hospital, Steve Burton, Jason Quartermain, Jason Morgan. Yeah, he was on there. Anyway, and it was actually kind of interesting. And you can see how it had tie-ins to X-Files and things like that. I'm gonna, Spirit is telling me to to show a little bit more of her stuff here, so I will. Um, There's just another book, so you can look it up for yourself. But the thing is that there, that's another book taken. That's the one that was converted into sci-fi, right there. Now the thing about Carla Turner, you all that are familiar with her, she had she talked about virtual scenario technology and the alien agenda and deception a lot. She had some horrible experiences. So did her husband, and they both died. She died under mysterious circumstances. I'm sorry. She suddenly she's unalive now, or however everyone says it. Entertainment purposes only, of course, but she's no longer alive, and it's under mysterious circumstances. Anybody can look that up. And a lot of her work was starting to get known at that time. But she talked extensively about that type of alien mind scan that happens during contact and how they're able to use screen memories, and screen memories make us see whatever we want. I mean, she was the first person that really went hard on the screen memory thing, and these are things that took it. Okay, so hold on, I'll show you the other one. Because her books are really good, actually. I have not read this last one, Into the Fringe, but I'll still show the picture of it anyway. All right. I don't know. It might be her best one. I mean, I don't know. I've not seen it. I've not read it. But this, although it seemed that, I was sure that my experience was positive, but still the fact that I lived, there's a base over there. There's all these other things that could have happened. But what if something, I was being like used or was somehow military connected or something. So I was really tripped out. And then when I started learning more about screen memories, I was like, well, it seems like everything that happened to me was positive. And I didn't get hurt. And I had that elation that comes after the experience. So I thought maybe everything, but I was, what if I got screened? So that's what got me into hypnosis, studying hypnosis, starting in about 95, 96, and trying to learn about it so I could see if I had suffering from screen memories. And I was trying to self-hypnotize myself. It really wasn't to hypnotize other people, it's for myself. And it took me years of studying it and then doing a bunch of workshops, doing different things to be able to start really doing that. So, man, I do other people, I can't do myself, really, because I can't let go of control. I had to go get somebody that I built a good rapport with and let them take me through the process to realize really when you, as what people call under, is really your full you. And that you have access to more of yourself than you ever had before, and you have more control than you've ever had before in true hypnosis. And that way, anyway, when you're dealing with stuff like this. So anyway, that's what got me into this. I wanted to know if I was suffering from screen memories, if really what I was experiencing was false. You know what I'm saying? So that's Dr. Turner, and she was the one talking about the holographic principle of concerning the experiences, contact, about the lies that go on during contact, and about some of the pain and things that Credo Mudawa talked about. Excuse me. So that's her other book there. All right. So I want to kind of take this and I'll turn it with something else too that I think that maybe we should just include here too. All right. It's just one more concept. When dealing with what could be the negative part concerning this technology, concerning this deception, I think also we also must look at the organic component as well. And that would be what they call this. We talk about AI, and we're talking about AI. That's what I believe this here is. And its concept of the mind virus. Okay, the Wedico. I've seen it spelled differently too. And I've seen other types of take on it of as it being of a fungal component. Excuse me, almost a mycelium component. And that takes us into, how a lot, right now, some types of fungus has a really bad negative connotation and has since the days of the body snatchers, invasion of the body snatchers and things like that. But when dealing with what this Wedico might be, I mean, I went so far, to be honest with you, as I had maybe a hypothesis that I wondered if unrefined oil was actually Wedico, and if unrefined oil is not really native to this planet. And that's why it seems like it's trapped. And that was part of this war that happened. And it's trapped underneath the tectonic plates for a reason. And I started sensing that the first time. Heck, that was back like way long time ago. And that oil spill, what was it? Which one was it? The refinery spill. To me, that the way the oil, the way it reacts to water, which is the major part of this planet, how, what is it, 1 quart of oil will contaminate like how many gallons of fresh water? It's unreal. There's some, and when I looked at how that oil was trying to get, it looked like it was trying to get loose during that whole thing of the way they were trying to contain it. So that's just one thing I wonder how much is, and hey, I may be fully wrong, but is non-refined oil sentient to a degree? People talk so much about the black goo and all this and that, but is it something much more simple than we think? And is that what's still here that is present of that and got to do with that? And how much does that tie into the Wedico? Anyway, this is just something I wanted to throw out there because the mind virus might be fungal and it might be mycelium related. And I don't want all mycelium and mushrooms and fungus to get a negative connotation because through my experiences, I know that's not the case always. And it takes us into things like I've been talking about psilocybin. And I'm sorry, I guess psilocybin or psilocybin. I never can pronounce that word correct. Anyway, the point is that what it actually does with the default mode network and how it can actually does journey spacing and leaves a chance for to actually clear out the default mode network, which is something that is vital for people that have either schizophrenic or depressive and various things like that. Okay, and it does it through neuroplasticity. So I think that's fascinating how that neural network works in our brains, and it takes us into the neural networks, these mycelium and all that. It's these networks. How the black holes are like a like neurons in that way, and how it's the same type of a system. To where I actually wonder, this is a whole other video I'll do sometime, but I wonder, like, according to what Rudy Shields I've learned through the data he had, what would be the default mode network of the universe? If the black holes are like the mirror neurons and the hardware neurons in that way, what would be the default mode network? I have a theory that it might be the gamma bubbles. In the Fermi bubbles, So anyway, never mind all this and that. That's never here nor there. All right, cool. I think that's a lot of what I was going to talk about on that. When dealing with optical AI and how they can get into our minds optically and project other places that we're not really there in other environments. There's some movies that kind of had shown that, and one of them is might as well show that one too. Heck, why not, man? There's this movie called Looker, and it's from Albert Finney and Susan Day, I think it was, and that guy Tony Tanashindi. This movie. In that there's a gun. I'm not going to go. I've got a couple. I've even got the diagram they had for the gun. But the gun is this gun that uses light pulses, and they describe it quite openly, that makes people lose time. Okay, and when you start looking at the fundamental things of how a lot of us lose time during contact experiences, whether they're positive or negative, it's very worthy of looking at what they're suggesting about the optical nerves here. All right, and it's the pulses of light is how they're doing it through this gun. And this also goes a little bit further. You want to talk about some AI type commercials. Look at what they were doing on here. That's what this movie was. This movie was all about. Not just the models that were getting the missing time, but they were like doing these commercials where the person just had to get scanned, and then they didn't have to actually do the commercial. They were just putting these people in there. They're very specific about it, and that's about it. And that was a long time ago. I mean, that was, gosh, I want to say that was maybe 1982, the Looker movie. But they were, like I said, they were giving suggestions of what light pulses and can be done with the optical nerves. And I think when we deal with some of these beings that have these strong biofields, okay, they can do that. And let's see, and that'll probably be the last one I'll show. But just so I can give you a frame of reference, because some people may not have seen the other ones that I've done, the other lives, so they wouldn't even know what I'm talking. What is he talking about? He's not making any sense, which is always a large possibility. And then I will actually have two other pictures I'll show you, and then probably I'll just talk to the audience a little bit and try to get us out of here soon. Right here. All right, I've shown you this being before, but this is on board the morphing organic ship. And this being, I think that was some type of like a chamber, a hybrid, like a chamber for, I don't know, youth or for beings. That's what I think it was. I think that was some sort of caretaker, that being. But the point thing is, she did really good in the illustration of this being. But the only thing is, the eyes on this thing were just massive. Okay, its head was massive, bigger than it appears there. That looks somewhat uniform. That cranium was kicking. It was huge. And the eyes were huge. This being seemed to bilocate me across the room because it's telling me something's wrong with that machine. It needs to be fixed and looked at, like I'm the person that could do it. I ain't never seen nothing like that. But it was really worried about the equipment, about somebody getting hurt. And it looked at me, and it's like it pulled me. Suddenly it felt like I was floating across the room, and I smashed into the melanin dominant eye. Literally, like my nose was smashed into this being's eye. But I didn't really go across the room. You see, so I'm sure that this being bilocated me through the optical nerves, separated my dream body, my energy body from my physical body. Somewhat like the stuff I guess they show on Doctor Strange now, that a woman knocks the Hulk and people out their body. Somewhat similar, but reverse. And we already know they have technology that can do this. But this being, and the being felt very alive to me. I felt emotions big time, stronger than our emotions even coming off this thing. So I don't believe it was a cyborg or a I do not believe it was I believe inorganic. I believe it was an organic being. Period. Excuse me, choked. Anyway, that's what I'm just giving as far as just giving the optical nerve thing and comparing that to like Looker and how the gun was using light pulses and things. I believe that's what this being was doing as well, and I believe that's what some of their technology does. So that's that. All right, now just a couple of real quick reference points. All right. When I was looking for things I found this to be an amazing similarity here, both in premise and the way it seemed to look. This is from the original Star Trek episode Spock's Brain. If you remember, the model looking women showed up and basically jacked old Spock's brain to run some citadel underground of a whole planet. At the end, McCoy wants to try to put his brain back, and they said they could give him the knowledge. And this thing, he gets under this thing, this helmet. Excuse me. And it like blasts him with knowledge. His eyes get real big, he's bugged out like you see there. And he starts going, "That child could do it. That child could do it." And he starts putting Spock's brain back in real quick. And then he gets a little bit more than halfway through and he starts spacing out. It starts wearing off. Anyway, it just reminded me of that. Okay. And, so it's just, again, like I said, I'm looking for similarities. So not just do we have that one, you have the thing that kind of looked like Nomad a little bit in the back corner there. So I just find it interesting. And, whose idea was this way before we started having neuro helmets that you have now. All sorts of different neural helmets now and things they have to kind of gauge our brain, Neuralink and all that stuff. So, but back then that was probably a little more interesting. Now I want to go one more thing. When I first became interested in quote unquote artificial intelligence, and the first time I saw it really displayed in a different way, and it's weird because I think a lot of people don't really think about it because it got messed up. Okay, so I know you know who that is. Biggie. But I was always much more interested in the thing he has on his chest, known as Dr. Theopolis. And of course, this is from Buck Rogers. And that is Dr. Theopolis right there. And the reason why I'm showing this to you, oddly enough, okay, is because one, it was, I know Hal came before him, but I hadn't seen that yet. 2001, Space Odyssey, whatever. I hadn't seen that yet. And I started watching Buck Rogers just a little bit before I had discovered Doctor Who. So I hadn't seen the robots presented there. But up to this point, it was Dr. Theopolis and the robot from Lost in Space were the first two AIs I had seen. Kit hadn't come around yet either. Knight Rider hadn't come around quite yet either. But here's why I'm kind of showing you this and even bothering, because I think it's really interesting. All right. Is this reason right here. In the future, on Buck Rogers, Dr. Theopolis is part of the Earth Council, the entire representation for Earth, and that's in charge of Earth. And this here is a council meeting, like the highest meeting on like Earth, okay? And there are other ones like him, as you can see, they're all different. I had a few other pictures, but I'm trying to pull them all up. But I just found that very interesting that they had this artificial intelligence as representation of the Council of Earth galactic-wise. And just period. Okay, and Theopolis was one of that, and he took a liking to Buck Rogers. But he just, people don't think about him as much, it seems like to me, because he was on Twikie's neck a lot of the time. And I don't think he showed up in the second season. I don't think he was on the second season. when they left in the Earth and were trying to do the whole Star Trek thing. That was a disaster move for that show. Anyway, this point being, I think this is worthy of just saying that this was my thought of artificial intelligence in that way. So, and it takes it a little more than just robotics, advanced a little bit more than that. And this takes us into things I'll just mention. I'll keep the picture up for a second, but something that's coming up a lot, which is the neuroprogramming and the hacking of the human brain. That they're way so advanced on that right now, and downloading conscious memories into these digital twins. If you look at that the E-file thing, that new one that came out, and you start really looking at the genetic stuff they were doing, that's what they were really trying to do was upload conscious memories into those digital cyborg things. Okay, and the same stuff that went on Star Trek. You remember the Star Trek Next Generation? They were dealing with that back then. They had that one dude that came on and tried to jack data. He downloaded himself into data, and he couldn't control his motor reflexes and stuff. And he started going kind of a little crooked. And then after that, he got out of data and downloaded himself into like the Enterprise, like a part of the Enterprise computer or something. So it's the same type of thing here we're seeing, and I just wonder how far is this reality? Cool. That's most everything I really wanted to show you guys as far as picture wise. So, one last thing. Okay, we talked about coils a lot, right? And I want to throw this in because I know some people wanted me to talk about this thing more, or to do even a live on. I thought I did during the time travel live that I did. But it concerns this thing right here. This thing that people are still trying to get from me, this HDR unit, this hyperdimensional resonator. Okay, and it's I don't have that stuff tied up on there now, but this one doesn't even work anymore. But it is like it's a psionic device, what do you call it, rubbing device. But here's what I want to show you why I'm even going over the coil thing. And I've done videos where I show this. This was actually 2 videos I regretted doing was over this thing, to be quite honest with you. It brought in more weirdos than I could shake a stick at. Anyway, right here, this thing that actually makes this thing interfere with the time field is called the caduceus coil. Okay, and it is basically a circular wire, copper wire. Okay, there's bent a certain way, a caduceus coil. I've got a better even sketch of it than that. And I actually show it in those videos. I take this thing apart. And that's what interferes with the time field, all right? Just when you start dealing with the coils, and also the coil that is the nano-coated coils for the GANs devices and the plasma devices, I think it's just worthy of noting that these spiral copper coils, nano-coated and otherwise, seem to interfere with time fields and do several other things as far as plasma ability, okay? And like I said, this thing, look, I did a bunch of experiments with this thing. And like I said, first I had to make sure it wasn't going to fry my testicles when I tried it, because this thing is pumping a bunch of juice. You put on the headband, I don't have it in here, and the big-ass electromagnet that you got to put up here and stuff like that to give yourself this actual time jump. Okay, you put this is the witness well, so you put some sort of materials in there, like some sort of rocks or crystals, and then you actually turn and God, what you call these things you rub, the rubbing plate, and that's how you kind of do this thing. It's interesting. Like I said, it interferes with the time field, and just the caduceus coil alone does that. But as far as doing a physical time jump, no. You know what I mean? Now, I tell you, I did find a small alternation in the timeline was messing with this. Some missing sushi. That's about as good as I could get it. But Stephen Gibbs, before he cussed me out, we cussed each other out, sorry, but it was that this thing could be made for do physical time jumps. There's just no way if you get a portal around your house, if you get a vortex. Now, I wouldn't want to use this thing in a vortex like where Jessica's team went. I wouldn't want to go in there and use this thing. You know what I'm saying? And when I told him, because actually, if it had a time integration circuit and a few other things, this might actually do something. And when I asked him that, he started yelling at me. He said I was a hybrid. And the only reason this thing didn't send me to another time place was because I'm a hybrid. Okay, whatever, man. And you know, it's just interesting, you know. Man, there's all sorts of types, all sorts of things. But in that video, I need to actually get those journals back. I go over some of the journals he sent me that weren't really so much of a joke, I don't think. But anyway, it's just a few things like that. The Caduceus coils, I want to bring that up in relation to the GANs nano-coated spiral things. That's it, everybody. So that's all the information we want to throw out. And it's just, I'm not trying to be an expert on AI or anything like that, but I can just tell you why I had an interest in it. That's why. And I think maybe we need to look a little bit further into it in terms of how now it's become such a neuroconscious thing that it's no longer even like, I mean, it's way almost beyond Matrix, it seems to me. So I think being aware of that is just really important, and how it factors in and how much further it's gone from just our knowledge of it when I was obsessing about it in the 90s. You know what I mean? When I saw, like, I have a friend and he's always got all the cool gadgets, man, but he's got one of those more advanced glasses you just put on, and it's walking through walking through a haunted house. I've seen others, but this one, I mean, it's like I was really there. You're walking through, you got to shoot things down and the blood. Oh my God, it was very, very vivid. You know what I mean? In terms of light years beyond standing in that box at the mall going like this, you know, that was it. Anyway, food for thought. So I appreciate everybody being here. I'll check in with everybody real quick. Bigfoot Dwarf, what's happening? Good show with Jessica, man. I enjoyed that last night, actually. Jerry, thanks for being here. Urso, thank you for being here. Candy Zippy, thank you for being here. Yeah, so yeah, two people did. Oh God, I forget I could do that. Sorry. See, I still don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, I believe that's correct. I definitely want to use that thing in there. You know what I mean? Stephen, before he got mad at me, we talked for a while on the phone a couple of times, and he had said some very interesting things. I'm probably repeating what I said on that time travels deal, but you know, he had said that he was invited to some conference, and the conference was to for people that have invented time technology or claim to be like time travel or inventor of time technology. And he said, but what it was a trap. And what they do is get those people and they confiscate their equipment and then basically lock them up and get them certified as nuts. And he started telling me about some sanitarium in, like, I don't know if he said it was in California somewhere or something. He had a name. And he said that all these inventors were put in there. And he said, if you were to go talk to anybody that is in that institution, they all say they're time travelers and stuff like that. So, you know, very interesting. You know, I can't prove it was true, but he was saying stuff like that. And the one props I will give him, okay, is I'm sorry that I don't have those journals that he gave me. A friend of mine that's an engineer was looking at them. I never got them back, but I will. He had said that one of the books he gave me had these devices in them that are much more advanced than this HDR unit. And I found them very interesting. And I said, you know, where'd you get these? Now, my friend that actually, Bill Spicer, looked at it and he said, well, some of these are kind of advanced. And I thought so too. So I called him. I said, well, where'd you get these schematics for some of these devices? He says, from time travelers from the future, one of them, which was me, Not himself, he's saying. I was like, okay. And then it's after that he kind of started getting weird and stuff. He's like talking like he was there's an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm when Larry David tries to go, he like dies, goes to heaven, and he starts arguing with whoever's at the gate and they send him back. He said that happened to him. He said he was arguing with the guy at the gate and they kind of told him, just take your ass back to Earth. Hey, maybe, I don't know. I heard he's dead now, or he's unalive now, so I don't know. Oh, sorry, I'm probably way back here. Auntie Erin, thank you for being here. Hey, I think you asked me a question, and I don't think I answered it. It was first of all, no, you didn't. You didn't offend me. We're cool. But you asked two questions. I think one I answered, another one I didn't. Excuse me. If I'm not mistaken, it was concerning Bashar. You want to know what I thought about Bashar and the validity and things like that. Look, I'm not into putting other people's down and information, but I personally have never been into channeling. Okay, as a medium and as a psychic, I don't think it's really very safe. And I think a lot of times you don't know really who and what you're dealing with. That's my first premises with that and the issue I have. But outside of that, you can't always I'm trying not to throw the bathwater out with the baby out with the bathwater. All right, because some of the information I've heard from him is decent. You know what I mean? Can I say any of the stuff is going to happen he's predicting? Probably not. Nothing any of these people predict or say ever happens. But as far as certain informational things he has said, like I'll give you example one. And I actually met Daryl Anka when I was speaking at the Stairway to the excuse me. When I was speaking the Stairway to the Stars in Vegas, I was that after the dinner of the award ceremony, he was sitting right next to me. Him and his wife were, and Richard Dolan was on the other side over there. He's really cool. Had some great interactions with Richard Dolan and his wife. But that was my first time I met Daryl. He seemed all right, it was him, not the Bashar thing, but it was all right. But anyway, certain things of information he says that I think is interesting. One would be a type of beings he had called I can't remember now, but it's similar to what I've encountered in terms of they even have presented on Doctor Who a little bit with the beings called the Silence. And I wondered about this. Okay, it's beings that it's fine when and I think some of the charters I've talked about have this ability too in their biofield. It's fine when you're talking to them face to face. You're very aware, everything's good. But then when they're gone and you're turned around and you're not in their biofield anymore, as my brother would say, things get, it starts getting like weird. Like this dysfunction. You're like, what? Who was I talking to? I was just with somebody. You were. You could feel it, but you're like, what just happened? Like it fades. It's very odd. And I noticed that these charters seem to have that ability that I've called charters. And I wondered if it was, one, is it just a natural biological function of them being a little vibrational faster than us, or on a frequency a little bit different than us? Is that just an effect it has on us? Or is it actually a defense mechanism that they've developed? I don't know. It's just a curious, you know what I mean? And I have noticed that. And Bashar had talked about that. And he's one of the first people to talk about that. I know that to be true just by experience. So little things like that might be very informative. Is he from where he says? Perhaps. I don't know. I know that the quote unquote Far Side Institute remote viewed Bashar, and they said he's a different entity from Daryl. So let that go on his own. It's not for me to test any of that. I hope that that's true, that all these extraterrestrials are going to be walking among us in just a couple of years, like what they're saying, much more openly than what's happening right now, than like what happened in that regression I had mentioned doing. Actually, it was a Earthbound Spirit release that I had done. It's one of the last ones I had done. And it was the being that was some type of a mantid that was in a crash here. It got attacked by a reptilian faction. And, and stuff like this, when it was pretty intense. It's the way it described that they were here doing, it's like a first contact type of thing. And that they're contacting individual people as a collective to help raise the consciousness. And it described being on board this craft in a type of a stasis type of deal, where I can see like a machine, but like like maybe 10 of them laying on a bed all around this machine that's doing some type of psychokinetic connection with contactees, and they're working with people. But when they were in that state, like I don't know if their shields were weak or what went on, but this reptilian attacked them and destroyed the craft, and half of the people died. The beings died. Just him and one other being survived, and then it described being basically murdered during handling when people discovered them. All right, so this being didn't cross over. It told me because it was pissed about the reptilians crashing the ship. It was very upset at how they were treated by the people that recovered them, and how it caused more pain and what were done to their bodies after that. And it was just pissed off. So it didn't cross over. Right. And so like I mentioned before, I had to go about it. How crossing something like that? Well, what is your society like? What is your spirituality like? And what it said was very fascinating. It said, we believe in much of like what you believe. We believe in a prime source, a prime God, a prime creator. But we're not disorganized like you all. We all are on one page, moving one way, one spirituality, one enlightenment. So you guys are all messed up and divided and it's so disorganized. And I mentioned before, when you think about what would it really be like for a insectoid species like that's sentient on a higher level, what would their society be like? How would it be similar to the insect colonies that we have here? It's just fascinating to think that stuff. Once we go a little bit beyond Brundlefly, Jeff Goldblum. Sorry, I said to throw that in there. Anyway, so hopefully that so Auntie Erin, that was a super long answer to your question from like days ago. So sorry I missed it on the deal. Hi, Carla. Yeah, you know what? I would show them again, but it might take me forever. But I'll happily, due to my lack of technology, my technical skills. But I'll tell you the names of them. Okay, the first book by Karla Turner was Taken. I think it's Takken. Taken. The second one, the one that kind of stirred me, was Masquerading Angels. That was the one that she really dealt with a lot of screen memories and stuff. Okay. And then the third one was Into the Fringe. All those three books are by Karla Turner. So let me know if that helps. I'd show the pictures, but I'd have everybody here another 5 minutes dilly-dallying around. But those are the names of them. Taken, Masquerade of Angels, and Into the Fringe. Now, as far as where you might be able to get them, I'm not sure. I don't know if they're probably still in print. I haven't heard that they've not, but I'm not an expert on that. But they're definitely worth checking out, Carla. I hope that helps a little bit. Thank you for being here, too. That's really cool questions there. Really cool. Really cool. Tamra. Alfie Robot in the 80s. I remember those. I had a few of them. I had something that's called a Big Track. Big Track was like kind of AI. It took orders, it would turn and move and stuff. I always really liked those hand Merlins. And I find it very interesting because I thought that they were made by Intel back in the day. And Intel now, certain non-human frequencies and biosensors and semiconductors detected by nonlinear junction detection technology has traced back to Intel. So anyway, I was like, man, I'd like it better we were just dealing with Merlin. Oh, there's somebody there. So I'm just going back up a little bit, folks. I'll go back down, but I know I get to talking so much that I don't look over here. I'll get to deal. Oh, it was a good one. That was a real good one. I was recently just watching an episode of the Twilight Zone, with a guy that played Quincy, Jack Klugman, I think that was his name. But they did this thing where they had like landed on this planet. When they finally get the right window, they land. There's another ship there that looks just like theirs. And when they get on board, it's them, they're dead. So they spend half of this thing trying like not to take off again because they're going to crash. It was really kind of interesting in that way. You know, it's just as far as that time dilation. They were calling it something slightly different. So we left and we got here first, and it was just good how often they were dealing with that too. Now, something about Stephen Gibbs and this right here, and again, this is before the falling out. This is when he was telling me that he had already sent me one of these. I said, I've never even talked to you before. And he was saying, he said, man, from the timeline I come from, there was no Twilight Zone. He said, Rod Serling came to me and I sold him an HDR unit. And he told me he was going into the past to make a show called The Twilight Zone. And I'm like, yeah, okay, Steven, you know, right on, man. I can go argue with St. Peter again or whatever. But, you know, then he said something. He said, hey, man, do you ever watch the original Twilight Zone? I said, yeah, I've seen most all of them many times. He's like, you ever notice how most of them are about time travel? That is true. A bunch of them are. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. So, you know, I mean, but it's to each their own personal delusion. I don't know. Oh, man. Yeah, she had a pretty, you know, her death was very suspicious. I believe her husband died, what, like 6 months before her? And it was just a weird deal. You know, I never say that word right, and people always want me to mess up a word. I never say it right, Bigfoot Dwarf. I just call it the PS. The PS, man, the PS. Mm. Yeah, you know, I think sometimes, Jerry, that we too focused on just only mantids. That was a mantid in that way, but you know, in that situation there, I'd ask the mantid too, like, hey, is this any of the caricatures or illustrations, you know, that the client had seen? Do you look like any of those? They said no. They look different. Said not like the earth insects, but there are insects. And you know, and the first thing it says is, you know, how peaceful they are. They're these peaceful beings. Said, but we're armed to the teeth. We're armed to the teeth. We're not supposed to be messed with. We're armed to the teeth. We're peaceful, and our whole thing is peace. But we're armed to the teeth. We are warriors. And, you know, that's the first. This thing starts saying that a lot, and you know, that's the trauma. The trauma of getting caught unprepared, crashing, and then getting caught in the energy fields of this planet and not leaving. And that whole deal is really a trip. I've come across, done a lot of earthbound spirit release, but now only 2 of them have I done that were not non-human in terms of extraterrestrials. And they weren't even on, this wasn't even on the demonic level. You know, you get those dark ones, those evil ones. There's certain things they can't say. They can't seem to conform and do. And there are ways that really they stick out like a sore thumb, you know. But these like this one, it was not a negative being at all. I was angry, upset, so I didn't cross over. But it wasn't an evil being. It wasn't trying to possess. Different type of level than the lower vibrational ones, you know. But just the thought of that, about how it's described, like all 10 of the whole crew are individually in those stasis fields communicating with individual contactees. So that's at least 10 people they were in contact with right there that were having experiences. I think that's really cool. You know, when talking about things like that morphing organic craft, I told you that after I saw this thing change into that crystal, like I'm looking over, or just before it did, there are these other 2 that come up that the person with me is watching. And then we look back towards town, you can see a couple of them like beaming light down what must be at people's houses, but it's way away. And the person with me started crying and said, are they doing that all the time? They must be doing it all the time. Nobody even knows they're there. And they say, how long before they get tired? And looking at me, and I said, hell, I don't know, man. I have no idea. I was tripped out. Mine was blown at that point. It's one thing to sit up and talk about this stuff now. It sounds like, oh. But, man, that stuff was a blown away. Tripping out hard, man. Anyway, but when thinking about what these beings were doing when they got ambushed, sounds similar to what I was seeing those craft do, those Merkabah crafts. What they were doing, that's part of our contact scenario right now. It's happening on that level. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. And it makes you take a whole nother interest in dream contact experiences. It's much easier than the crap I went through. Those people don't have to be hard-headed like I'm hard-headed. So I'm up there, ooh, let's puke and stuff, when I could just be in the dream body, enjoying it, learning, and trying to retain that information from the dream body to the physical body. That's really where it's at. Boom. Okay. All right, I'm going back the wrong way here. I probably better go the other way. Smoking type clothing. Sometimes smoking clothing, you know, there's praying mantis, black praying mantis hybrids. And, you know, we don't even think about them. There's black praying mantis here on Earth. These praying mantis that are coming from either negative mass or dark energy, dark matter, whatever, which is actually plasma, cold plasma a lot of times, or dark plasma. They're coming from that, okay? And then there's humanoid form that they have these hybrids that they've inbred with. And I've met many people now that have had interaction, well, not many, but several people have had interaction with these beings. They can be, so they have pyramids on their forehead sometimes. They're very tall. They tend to wear, what is that, like Moors clothing, the long clothing that kind of show that you can't tell that they have that extra joint in the neck, extra joint in the elbow until they start dancing and moving in front of you. Okay. And I think the guy, Kel, in fact, we did Black EET video, BET live, and I talked about that. Daniel Kell, he talked about meeting them. Those of you that know who Matthew Morning is, he has met one too. Yeah, him and I did a Journey to Truth after the Journey to Truth conference, or actually it was after the Cocoa Beach Starseed Adventures or whatever that conference was. After that one, that's when I first met Matthew. We did a show on Journey to Truth, and it was about that. He talked about all that, about how he met this being that showed up, smoke, converted to him in smoke, teleported to him in smoke, and left in smoke. That's very interesting when you start thinking about how vampires were able to do that, and what Matthew Delph talks about vampires in bottles. I did a video on that because him and Jessica were talking about that. Anyway, so going back down to where we should be here. Hello, hello, hello. Greetings, Aaron. Well, take me to pick some shrooms out of some crap, huh? Out of some cow crap, Bigfoot dwarf. I used to have a couple of friends who used to do some crops inside, and they, you know, I remember they, what is that? Those blue Hawaiians. Oh man, brother, them blue Hawaiians. What is it? That had me feeling like I was maybe Don Juan and Carlos Castaneda. Man, back in the good old day. Thank you for being here, MPW. I appreciate that. Thank you for listening and taking the time to hang out. Okay, I'm trying to go back down now to where I'll get caught up. I want to see my. Starbuck was to later reboot. Candace was good. I never got too much into Battlestar Galactica, either of the shows. The first one I watched a little, because I always thought Lauren Green was kind of cool. He was the Alpo guy, and you know all that. But I thought the kind of the Cylons were real interesting too. And I had heard it was Glenn Larson. Glenn Larson was saying that Kit, the Night Industries 2000, and Carr were like the first Cylons, and that's why they have the sensor. I don't know. I did make people make AI videos now, but that was a while ago. I just heard that one. Kind of like what I had heard. I didn't know, like, like the Jetsons were always in the sky. I was mentioning this to Jessica the other day. The Jetsons were always in the sky. Nobody really seems to know like what was below them. They lived on platforms. They were always they're air cars. Below them was the Flintstones. It was completely primitive. Whatever happened to Earth down below was like bedrock or whatever that place they lived. But that was down below. There was even a crossover episode where the Jetsons went down and we're talking to Flintstones. So that's kind of what's going on, the connection there. I find that fascinating. You know, Jetson, that a lot of people are unaware of that, but there's a connection there. Of course, I was more of a Thundercat fan and in another genre of cartoons myself, but Teddy Ruxpin. You know, I think that's the isn't that really what spawned what spawned the whole Mark the whole that bear that talks things, that bear that he's always been smoking the bud with or whatever. It kind of Teddy Ruxpin gone bad or something like that. Oh. Yeah, so that. Mm-hmm. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Oh, there's some info. So they still are they still in print? That'd be interesting to know. Hey, thank you. Thank you for being here, Festy Kitty or Feisty Kitty. Thank you for being here and coming. I appreciate that. A lot of times it's me just rambling on like you know the proverb the, the rumbling proverbial professor or whatever he calls it. You know. Hmm. Yeah, see, I'm not sure exactly what he's talking about there, but it sounds interesting though. Really good to see everybody kind of talking about some stuff. Allison, greetings. Thank you for coming. How was it this year? I've never been invited back there again, but I was glad I got to go that one time. I I'm noticing you know, I was looking at the thing at the contact in the desert the other day. They got like one ethnic person speaking at that thing. Why is there never any ethnic people, specifically black people, speaking at contact in the desert? I've wondered that for quite some time. You get a couple at the Life Conscious Expo, somebody beyond Carson. Okay, I see other people get spotlight that are melanin dominant besides just him. But that I find that interesting. Why no others are invited there, and there's enough people now talking. It's not like I'm the only person anymore, or he's the only person of color talking about that. There's several people. They're doing different things that they should be somebody on that roster. Several people year after year. You know, as far as Conscious Life Expo, my experience with those people was great. So I had nothing bad to say about that deal at all. I was treated very fairly. It was the most honestly, the one at Vegas was really big. I was on Kimberly, I think Grafter's the last name, her show a couple of days ago, and that's where I met her in Vegas. That was a huge one. But that one in Vegas, Allison, that's the biggest one I've ever been at. You know, I was pretty sure when I was downstairs going through one of those tables over there that I was Ice T's wife, Coco. Pretty sure it was her that walked by me. I was like, oh, whoa. There's some like bodyguards kind of behind her, trying to stay back just a little bit. I was looking around for Ice T. Didn't see him, but I'm sure that was her. That was like legitimately, it seemed like a red carpet event to me. There were so many vendors, like hundreds of vendors in there. I never seen a conference that big. It was quite impressive. Different levels. It was cool. So anyway, well, let me know how it was though. Did you enjoy the panels or anything, or was it cool? You know. Oh, hey, no problem. My pleasure. My pleasure. Hope it helped. Yeah, like I said, yeah, it's a lot of stuff to look at and kind of, use your discernment and check it out. I mean, because as far as what that being says it is, I don't see any reason that it might not be, but some of the beings that it talks about and the way it talks about consciousness is interesting, and it's worth listening to. Of course, you could get people like us that study a lot that could just put that on as a show, but maybe it's not. So it's not really for me to question it. It's more like if you get something from the material, go for it. You know what I mean? So forbidden fruit. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. What's that? Some gypsum root. See, that's that digital twin type of stuff right there. What you're talking about. People would say, when that digital twins, uh, that's real serious. And there's I want everybody to look that up. I would almost do it right now, but I want to break up off here because I'm on two different sort of check out the name of it on YouTube is Epstein was uploading consciousness. Type that in. Epstein was uploading consciousness. And look at what they're saying there in the documents that they show. Ooh boy. Ooh. Anyway, check that out. And what they're talking about doing that and dealing with that. And I want you to take that and compare that with what I've been saying a lot about the 21 and back situation. I'm not trying to discredit anybody or question anybody's testimony. It's not like that, but there's a connection there, and it's coming out big time with data and scientific proof. And if that kind of stuff would happen to me, I would be trying to find out why and who did it and what I'm emitting frequencies and all that. So, I mean, that's just something to keep on there where all that's being traced back to there, at least a part of it. And I will say something else on that particular video. Something I found very disturbing, and all of it, but something else is that they have documents there that are showing how they were doing experiments and gathering people that had brain damage and traumatic brain injuries and had abilities, new abilities that emerged after getting brain injuries, like psychic abilities and clairvoyance and mediumship. And they were doing experiments on them. So, being somebody that survived 4 catastrophic traumatic brain injuries and had my abilities, if anything, some of them enhanced by that. They're already strong, but something like went off the scale a little bit after that. I find that super disturbing, super disturbing. Amongst all, it's all disturbing, but something about each of that gets to some of us somehow. So anyway, I better shut up talking about it before I get shadow banned again. So I hear these people saying, "Oh, I got shadow banned." And look at their counts on the videos they do. The counts skyrocket. They say they're getting skybook and they're taking off. They're taking this stuff off and doing this. Half of those people are doing that themselves. If you want to see what real shadow ban is, look at my channel. Go back and look at some of the videos I did, like anywhere from 10 years ago to about 6 years ago. Look at the counts on them. The counts are like up around 10,000. A lot of those videos, 8,000. They would happen quick when I would put them out. Then all of a sudden, boom, it went down to like 5,000. Boom, it went down to like barely 1,000. Then it went underneath that. I mean, really quick. And I wasn't paying attention because I was trying not to. I believe there are entities that are over these likes and over these clicks. And if they're trying to get our energy fields intertwined in some weird way in cyberspace with those clicks. So I try not to pay attention until these guys approached me in 2019. And it's almost 2020. They said, "Man, you got shadow banned. Look at your count." I wasn't paying attention, but I saw it then. Then a certain depression came with it. "Oh, just quit." They say trying to make you quit and all that stuff. It's the whole deal they're doing. So I'm still here though, and that's all right. Maybe I should do like somebody y'all know and show some cleavage and get more subscribers. Sorry, just kidding, couldn't help it. Anyway, yeah. Oh. think you guys are talking about different shrooms. I'm hearing all sorts of different types. You know, I got to say, I'm guilty. I enjoyed. I never liked that Oregon Trail on Apple, but I did like the original Nintendo, like Contra. A couple of those games I thought were pretty fun. I did that last night. Some big pieces of salmon and some salmon with the seafood in the middle. Oh, those ones are really good, man. Have you heard of Asani? Yeah, one of Bashar's groups, right? And somebody else has talked about the Asani too, and they're supposed to be the human hybrid, like the gray human gray hybrid things that are going to be coming here, like these higher hybrids or something, right? And that's what Bashar says he is Asani, right? And gosh, he's named a couple of different beings, but I think that's the one he said he was Asani. I've seen several different pictures of them too, and like maybe those are the hybrids we have. But outside of that, I mean, not outside of his information, not especially. At one time, I heard somebody else use that name though. It was somebody, but who was it? But he's the one that talked about it the most, with all honesty, the I can remember. So. Well, there's a wise old saying: sometimes secure your thoughts. Don't let them just float out there because people will pick them up. And it's always weird the way people pick up thoughts. They just start thinking about somebody and weird things like that. But if you've got somebody trying to probe you, that's different. So make sure you've got your shields up. You know how to psychically protect yourself, how to project a thought out that shields others. That actually will project and hit them first. So that's one thing. But ultimately, it works better at night if you can find somebody that wants to participate with you and try it that way. You know what I mean? That's the best way to do it. Just it's one of those things, just those muscles we don't exercise enough of telepathy and telethought. All right. Yeah, I I like those things. I thought those are pretty fun. I like Simon Says too. The Simon Says wasn't as advanced as the Merlin, but those Simon Says the the buttons on them, the red, green, yellow, the buttons. I've seen panels on ships that look similar to that. And what's weird is I don't think you touch them though. I think maybe you just go like that and they activate. You don't have to actually press the button. But the configuration of them just kind of look like that to me. You know. Oh, thank you for being here. Somebody I just rushed past there asking something about Arthur C. Clarke. I haven't read a lot of his stuff since last. I was more into him when he did those. Like there was these magazines my mother used to get, the Arthur C. Clarke magazines way back in the day. She got that in Natural Geograph or Geographic. I like reading those too. Ah, Ascent of the Phoenix. That is not Susan Long, the mystery person. What's happening? Jessica said that too. Said Assistant of the Phoenix. That's not Susan. I said no. I've been calling them wrong that for like weeks and weeks and weeks. Um, I think it's pretty incredible, and I'm glad that he shared that. You know what I mean? And you've got a few things like the missing hand, the fingers, and stuff like that. But what he said about some of that technology and some of what can actually be verified, because he did like what those three or four that still I haven't seen those around in a while, actually, on YouTube. But a lot of stuff he was saying could be actually verified. And, so much of it correlated with, what's up? I don't have it in here. Behold the Pale Horse was the first book that I had read that was a lot similar to what Phil was talking. These things about, he was mentioning things in there just before Phil came forward, I think, or right around the same time. But as far as somebody that is talking about the underground bases, their constructions, and the transient system that exists down there, I think he's top level. Everything he's saying. If you think about maybe the attack he talks about that they had with the Greys, and kind of compare that to some of the stuff that Clifford Stone was talking about, I see some similarities in there too. And I think Clifford Stone and Robert Dean were some of the best whistleblowers ever, in my opinion. So yeah, definitely. Oh. The Night Gallery, yeah. Sterling's other one, yeah. The Night Gallery. What was the other one? Gosh. I want to say the Fugitive, not the Fugitive. Oh man, God, I could see it. It was like there was three. Anyway, that doesn't matter. Yeah, but yeah, the great show, great show. I'm a Twilight Zone fan. Even that movie remake back in the '80s wasn't too bad, you know. Right on. Very cool. Wow, I'm glad to see everybody chatting up a little bit. Oh, I think Jessica's here. I think. Wow, this is awesome, man. I'm like way behind. I'm going forward, going back, and getting kind of lost. Oh, there she is. What's up, Jessica? Thanks for stopping by. Appreciate you being here. Good show with Bigfoot Dwarf last night. I enjoyed that. Dream body and physical body. Welcome. Thank you for being here, Lavender. Appreciate you coming. Yeah. Hopefully that was interesting or of help, that is, anyway. Been talking a lot lately about the assemblage point and the point that's on our luminous cocoon, our soul frame, that actually the filaments of the universe go through, and it gives us the world that we assemble. And how just a little bit movement of that assemblage point, other universal filaments go through that assemblage point, we assemble a whole different world. So that's just something, kind of interesting and cool to think of in terms of what we are, excuse me, as beings of perception. You know what I mean? Yeah. Bonanza. Yeah, that was an interesting show. That one of the most longest running shows ever, right? That one and the one with God, my dad still loves that show. Dylan, Matt Dillon, Gunsmoke. They tear up some Gunsmoke. Yeah, I was more of a rifleman and Lone Ranger guy. In fact, I got into a interesting discussion not long ago. Do you remember there were two Lone Rangers, Clayton Moore, and then there was that other guy way back then that took over for a while, and he just sucked. He was a terrible one, worse than Adam West as Batman. I'm sorry, he may have had the voice, but that cat in that uniform was worse. That's ridiculous as me putting it on. He looked terrible. I mean, that was not the way Batman was supposed to. He's out there doing. He's out there doing it. Oh man, what the heck was that? That was painful. Oh, people exchanging. That's really cool. Ah, yes, I saw her. Well, honestly, I couldn't only watch a few minutes of it, and I turned it off. It was her interview with the dude that was there. Um, yeah, she's there each year. It seems like she does a host something there pretty each year, so that's pretty cool. I'm glad for her. Lexus is cool. Yeah, thank you for being here, Brunson. Appreciate you being here. Thank you. Appreciate you coming. Yeah, brother, I think so. I really think so. And believe me, my eyesight's good enough to where I was looking in total, complete every section, every piece, everything out. That's got to be her. You know what I mean? It's when I knew I still had 2020. Oh, which badge? Oh, who knows? Oh Lord, I got a few of them. Ah, yeah. You know, I mentioned before, very disappointed in Linda a little bit in terms of she never got back with me when I tried to communicate with her a few other times. She never said, we have a bunch of work to do together, but I never actually talked to her again. And honestly, I thought it was maybe because she found out I talked about black extraterrestrials. I could totally be wrong on that, but it seems very odd because after I was mentioning something, since she like stopped responding. So, I'm just saying, and I've seen some other people that ask her, how come she just focused on tall whites only and never talks about anything that's black extraterrestrials? And she said, well, Ray said, oh, I never had anybody to talk to them about them or anybody that's talked to me about them or reported them. I, I found that, I find that shaky ground, you know? And the other, I just tend to keep my mouth on that other individual. I'm just not a fan. I could be changed. Maybe I'll meet the cat one day. He'll acknowledge my presence instead of walk by me with bodyguards like he don't see me. Not. I'm not a fan. You know what I mean? Just not. And it's one thing I can tell somebody that just sits and researches on the computer all the time. A lot of us do that. Okay, so I'm just not a fan, but I'm not trying to hate either. But I won't be sending any Christmas gifts. Oh. Oh yeah, yeah. I know somebody, man. They show so much cleavage. I think they get like they do a live. They get like 900 people real quick, man. Everybody's looking for a for a areola slit. You know. Hey, I guess you got to use what you got, right? Oh. What kind of energy do they use to encode? Okay, what you got is what encodes the information are conscious waves, of what they're called. All right. And when you actually deal with the black hole, I feel like sometimes I say this so much, people, oh no, he's not talking about that again. But the black hole itself, when something goes through the black hole, all right, and what the black holes are actually called, according to Rudy Shields, he calls them MECOS, MECOS, for magnetically eternally collapsing objects. All right. And what happens when something goes through, like this crystal goes through the portal, goes through the aperture of the black hole, okay, there is an exact perfect copy made on the surface, okay, and that's called the quantum hologram. So really what the mako itself is the mechanism that holds the information. and information occurs through these conscious waves, and the conscious waves occur spherical. Okay, they can be two-way, spherical and helical. All right, and when it comes to like our bodies, we have these things that are called microtubules. And in this example, we're going to talk about the microtubules of the brain, okay, and the neurons, okay, and the microtubules are spherical as well. So they can interpret the conscious waves. And what's real interesting when thinking about the neurons of the brain and the mirror neuron network, okay, how that actually works and what I'm saying right now, you can see and kind of with me, that is also like the quantum hologram, the same phenomenon there that we're dealing with. So it's conscious waves. And when people talk about that, so when you have information of the universe that's flowing through the black hole, that information is wrapping around the Mako the same way almost an accretion disk does. Okay, so when people talk about the Akashic records, the records of space and time, but they don't never really tell you what they actually are. It's the black holes. And the way that people say that they're accessing the Akashic records is through the conscious waves, the microtubules of the brain, and the fact that the speed of thought is instantaneous. So the Makos are not far away in that way. You feel me? You know, it comes down to the thing of where does like stuff like Hawking radiation and the other things like that factor in. But I kind of tend more to think because we're dealing with things on a conscious level, and we start taking even to, like I talked to Rudy about how we have actually Makos attached to the individual molecules of our bodies. So we start talking about a species that can harness all the energy from their black holes of their own body, the Makos of their own body, and use that for galactic teleport. It's a whole nother thing going on. And that's what supposedly some of these brothers can do that are not the mantis hybrids, but another type that one of the whistleblower cats talked about. And I don't even want to begin to mention their name because I got attacked again because I mentioned their name on another deal, and they act like I believe everything the cat says. It's not for me to even believe it or not. I don't buy it all, but there's certain things, and I said that the cat had that Artron energy on him, which means he's either been on board a craft or been around beings at some point. I have to accept that first. How much they're saying this lies is not me to judge. I don't care. You know what I mean? The only thing I cared about was hearing about black extraterrestrials in particular. But I got so attacked over that just a few days ago. I mean, it's like, man, and I, and two is like Artron energy that comes from Doctor Who. I told everybody that. I took it from Doctor Who. That especially because the TARDIS doesn't just run on Artron energy, but that takes them through the vortex, and it irradiates the cells of people that have been on board the TARDIS. And I think that's what happens to some of us when we're around these beings or on board those ships that actually are dimensionally displaced. The engine is actually temporally displaced, and it irradiates our bodies and does something. I can sense it on other people. And some of these people that claim to be contactees, I don't sense it. But they got big stories. That don't mean that they're not true, but I just don't sense it. And on that cat, I did. Okay, maybe not to the degree of what they say they've been through intellectual progress or their own property. I don't even care about that. It's too much bureaucracy around them. And I've said that before. But yet there's some things that I have to take, and try to just understand and try to see where's the thin line of truth in there. You know what I mean? But the stuff like that discourages me about some things in these communities, Anyway, neither here nor there. But hard drive the universe, hopefully I answered that for you. That's how they operate like hard drives in the way I was saying, as like Akashic records in that way. And if you think about what I was just mentioning, is that when you go to the inner part of the Mako itself, that right there would be the universe at present. It's going to be the outside, like if it's a Akashic disk, it's the outside of things that we are now and the beginning of the entire record. You know what I mean? But the middle of it is going to be what's actually happening now. So it takes us through white hole and all that stuff. It's pretty cool. And I like working with Rudy a little bit because he did the stuff that was information he got from the observatories before he retired. So yeah, it's just data. Yeah, a lot of different mushrooms. It's so interesting because we talked a lot about that, and right now, not just are they saying that they're going to give us habitations of mushrooms on Mars and on the moon, but they're also using a type of mushroom for radiation shielding of the new space stations and the old space station. They're trying to make a type of shield that's a mycelium radiation shield. Stuff that they're doing with the mycelium and the fungal is it's going out and going further and it's getting more. So, oh man, thank you for being here, brother. I appreciate you being here. I really do. You're doing great work. Oh, sorry, Alexander. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Yeah, yeah. I remember before, well, it was before my mother even got sick. I came over to visit one day, and she said, "Your father, he watches that damn Mercat Manor. I can't stand that show." She was mad. She didn't like no Mercat Manor. Anyway, Sleestack, Land of the Lost. Yeah, old Batman costume. Yeah, yeah. The Sleestack, a good idea. They didn't quite have the technology to back it up, did they? I was watching something interesting. They had some sort of Atlantean crystal or something on the ground they were worshiping or something. The Sleestack. Yeah. I'll tell you, somebody used to crack me up too. The original Centaurans on Doctor Who. They always look funny to me, man. It's the Centaurans. They look a little more expensive now, but. Oh, thank you. Not sure what it was, but thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's weird because I've always been a fan of Linda. She came to my state in like 1987 to do cattle mutilations, and I'd never, it's a whole different deal. And then I started hearing on Art Bell, and I always wanted to meet her. And I did get to meet her; it went really, really well. But I don't think she's trying to really deal with the stuff that I deal with. That's all right. There's nothing wrong with that. That was cool meeting her though, and talking to her and Mary Rodwell at the same time. And for me, it was just cool. I always said, man, if I stay real, one day I'll get to meet Linda Moulton Howe. And that's exactly what happened. It's a shame it was right after I'd almost died in Australia, but I was still good by that point. Yeah, right on, man. Me either, Mark. Me either. I try not to be a hater, but and so far nothing has happened to change my mind. And then sometimes, like I mentioned in one live, one thing I try to do is I try to learn my lane to stay in my lane. That cat went out of his lane and he got dealt with, man. He got dealt with. Everybody just forgot about it, though. You know what I mean? Just like somebody comes forward and say, "Oh, I was lying about most everything I said," and everybody just forgives them and goes on. I swear to you, I would not get that same reception. Let me come forward and say, "Oh, by the way, I just lied about everything." I'd be toast just like that. Deservingly so, but some of these people have so much faith in them and like them because there's somebody they see it or whatever they're saying this, and they're people that are wanting fame. So it's like the stuff that feeds itself. There's other parts of people that just don't really care about it. I mean, of course, would it be cool to be rich and famous? I guess, but it's not going to be in this stuff. It's not going to be for seeing UFOs. It's not going to be talking about the spiritual. Well, I guess if you lie a little bit and spice it up, you might be able to get there. But it's not very likely. This is about saving humanity, and we've got people that are awake and communicating, and that's where it's at. There was times we couldn't talk about none of this stuff. I'm like, oh, they're crazy. That's changing, and it's you all that's changing it. It reminds me of Odo when he went to heal the Great Link in the last Deep Space Nine. Sadly, I kind of wished. Well, I guess the Picard. I haven't seen all the new Picards yet, but the way they kind of changed the way the changelings look, I thought that kind of sucked a little. I liked that they were that golden kind of look before, but I guess that they went through some issues that some of them kind of changed a little after all that virus and all that. Anyway, and again, him and Odo and Urfa Man is interesting to me always. Butterfly brain. Barry, what kind of entity would cause deep paralysis for decades? And when I gave in, I learned I could astral travel. This entity has pulled my awake body down in bed and paralyzed me. It's invisible. First, I would say, okay, sounds like could possibly be it's a succubus. Succubus cause sleep paralysis, and they do that quite a bit. Now, what's interesting though, but when you say it gives you the ability to astral travel, if you were to look at like the dream practices of like Carlos Castaneda and the Toltecs, when they talk about the allies that come in dreams, which are the inorganic beings that are hiding behind the phantasmagorical images of our brain impulses, brain electron impulses, really. But what happens is like then like when you start being able to quote unquote butterfly hold your dream attention, which is something somebody like me had to work at. You hold your dream attention, meaning you can shift your attention from thing to thing. You know, not some people are natural dreamers and are strong and can do that. Other people like me have to get the energy from like storing energy and to have that dream attention. All right, so that's one thing. But once you can sustain your dream attention, you've got these inorganic beings that show up as two types. The first type show up as a unique something different and out of order in your field of vision or your field of perception. Okay, like the other kinds, the worse, they show up as people you know and people you love, but they attack you. They're attacking you. But the other ones, the first ones, because they're trying to get you to build up that negative thought energy. Okay, so they can feed. And they can do that real easily in that realm while hiding behind phantasmagorical images. They can really get us riled good. You wonder, man, my father and my mom would never talk to me like that. And they're just going off on you. But back to what you're saying, Butterfly. Sorry, I get too excited. The first type of the inorganic beings that will be like something odd in the object. I can tell you how it happened for me, okay, was that I was practically, when I was doing this, has been a decade and a half, 2 decades ago. But one of the times I cleaned my apartment, it was just, I mean, you just bust your butt, you get things so clean. And I went to work that day, I was so clean, I could wait to get back home. My crib's so clean, that type of deal, you know. And it's one of the deals where I didn't know I was just sleeping, having a dream, because I just was at work and I was dreaming I was coming home. Okay, and I walk in and I remember seeing how clean my place was, and in the middle of the glass table was like this first dynasty Ming vase. Okay, and I remember just looking at it going, man, that thing is so clean. Oh man. You know, when took a shower, man, go kick it, have me a brew and stuff. Looking at the shower, looking at, man, that thing is just clean. It's great, you know. And I started thinking, you know, one thing is you're like, man, you know, I don't have no security system in this apartment. And I'm going to work for 10 hours and I'm leaving something that's worth millions and millions of dollars on the front table like that. And the other thing is that table, I had a party one night or was kicking it one night and actually broke it, stepped through it. That table got broken, but so it no longer existed. These two things start not jiving, okay? And I'm looking at that vase and it's not the communication between that awareness and my normal awareness, that boundary was crossed, okay? Because I became very aware that was not real. It couldn't be. Okay, what I'm seeing was not. So I start looking around. I look back at this vase, and I'm trying to do what will be a looking technique, a gazing technique on it. Okay, it turns into this like pink energy ball and goes into the wall and disappears. It morphed right there. Now, what I found out later is when you start doing these dream practices, okay, that is one of those inorganic beings that if I was a better dreamer and knowing that the physical laws don't apply to the dream body, the energy body, I could have followed that being and followed them through all the realms it goes through, which is dangerous though. You mess around, get stuck in a world of inorganic beings of some type, or a whole different world. But that's stuff that Castaneda went through in the dream practices. I thought were very interesting. You know what I mean? But anyway, that's something that I know that is not just BS, because I've seen a not natural being or not natural object in a disguised as something else, and then able to go in through and go into the worlds of the dream and the different worlds of the inorganic and the worlds of consciousness. Okay, so that's what the trading dreamers could do. So you're describing a being that could do that. So I don't know, but it seemed like two different to me. Is that and the succubus the same thing? But it's normally the succubus that induces the sleep paralysis, or incubus succubus. That's my answer to that. I hope that helps. But as far as that, it could be what Cassian would call an ally in the dream to help you take you into other realms, and it becomes a deal of being careful and make sure that your silver cord doesn't go too far, and you still snap yourself back through self-preservation. Yeah, I'm not going to go real into, because I don't think it's a joke deal, but the whole black extraterrestrial thing is not mentioned enough, and you don't hear much about it. So I advise going to the part of this channel that is melanin dominant science, okay, and black science. And concerning Marvin the Martian, where you're cracking jokes, they're supposed to be actually based on beings that come from Tau Ceti F. Okay, on Tau Ceti F, there's supposed to be a type of they're not grays, but they're these melanin dominant gray type of beings that look like that, but they're melanin dominant. And what happened is there was a war there, the same as what Brandenburg and other people are saying the war on Mars happened, but it happened on Tau Ceti F first. They blew that place up, and then they came to Mars, and the same thing happened on Mars. And when you start dealing with these Tau Ceti beings, they're supposed to be represented in our entertainment by Marvin the Martian, who was extremely melanin dominant. And if you want to look at the first when Marvin showed up, what was he doing? He was trying to destroy the Earth. He had a big old machine. He was trying to blast us, man. So just food for thought of what really Marvin the Martian is supposed to be representation of, which is the little beings from Tau Ceti. And I'll tell you something interesting about that is that when I gave Tau Ceti F to actually Jessica Jones as a blind target, I just wanted to see like what beings and stuff she saw there. But I mean, it was quickly in that data she was getting this destruction and beings that were doing an exodus, but it was because they destroyed the place in a nuclear war. And she's describing exactly what Brandenburg and other people say due to, was it Xeon 120 on Mars, that they're saying happened on Mars is nuclear war, obliteration from orbit. Same thing she was seeing, but a completely different target. I mean, stuff like that you can't make up, and it blew me away. So that's the kind of place where I'll throw in the Marvin the Martian thing, Anyway, up next. Probably give it just a couple minutes. I'm probably going to get out, y'all. I had heard something about that. That was a while ago, wasn't it? I heard something about that. I can't give you the exacts or anything, or like what being it was or anything. But I heard something about that. There was something about the technology it had too, and it was saying it was connected to the Antarctica or something. I'd heard something about that though. Oh. That makes sense. Never thought about it. That's cool. Lucid dream. You know, the thing that would be a little different, lucid dream is being aware, okay, and having dream attention to a degree, but it's not the same as actually being able to transfer the full cognitive conscious abilities into the dream body and into that dream body, and then being able to manifest the dream body here in the third dimension. And you know, that's what, when you really start reading into what, like what Castaneda was talking about, you know, he would mention that when sometimes Don Juan and Don Genaro would show up, their eyes were twinkling like really bright. And he was always kind of not paying as much attention to that because Don Genaro scared him. And he said because Don Genaro all the time would start doing things in front of his eyes that were physically impossible, like jumping on fire, jumping on waterfalls, and doing different stuff that just is physically impossible. And it's stuff when Castaneda would see it, he would like lose control of his bowels and stuff. And they start laughing at him, saying he was so brainwashed that he couldn't. And they say, you have a configuration of a novel, you should be able to see, but you can't see. And Don Juan later told him, if you could have seen, you would have seen that Genaro jumping around on the waterfall. He was a ball of energy. And he could have still gotten hurt doing it, but he was showing off for you, but you can't see. And if you think about cognitive dissonance and cognitive bias, he's seeing a human jumping around. He can't accept seeing an energy ball doing it. Can't see in that way. So, you know, it's a interesting stuff like that. But then again, this is a situation too where Don Juan had done it to the Castaneda's, the Warriors party that he was training. He walks into a room and like all 4 or 5 people in there saw him wearing something different. He's wearing a suit for some, others wearing a costume, other one he's dressed up like a sailor. I mean, each person saw him looking differently. And that just makes me think of Jessica Jones, when she talks about at the Montauk deal, how they were approached by some security guard that each one of them thought was something different. Okay. And what Don Juan was doing was moving that assemblage point I was talking about, just moving it slightly so that what the energy projecting off him was being perceived different by everybody's pineal gland and everybody's physical eyes in that room. But that was a manipulation of the pineal of the assemblage point, you know. And that takes us into something else I've talked about, which is the death defiers. And you have those death defiers that can move their assemblage point and they bury themselves in the earth and they become part of the earth. They're part of the earth matrix. Supposedly they will continue to exist as long as the earth does. And then you have the other death defier that he talked about that was able to move its assemblage point to where it could be a man or a woman and also pull energy from others to keep itself alive as this immortal. And how there was like certain lineages that gave energy to the death defier. Stuff like that is very fascinating when you start dealing with awareness and consciousness and just some of the ways other cultures have dealt with it. I think it's cool. Anyway, sorry, I'm mumbling on too much here. Uh-oh. Oh, sorry. Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Sorry, I'm getting to gabbling so much, I forget exactly which one I was talking about there, but I'm glad it helped. Clowns. Interesting how many people do not like clowns that are contactees. Those talk about screen memories. That's one they definitely use as one of clowns. Boom! Exactly. And that takes it into the head of Mars. To me, I've always thought, Michael, I've always thought that was representative of Olmecs. And when it comes to, in fact, I'll show a picture of this real quick. So just we're talking about just something that I think people should know about. If I can find it here. Ah, here it is. Okay, sorry, it took me a second there. Right here, these sisters, all right? From the motherland to the mothership. Charlene and her sister, Charlene and her sister, Erlene Wallace. Interacted with them a little bit, okay? Charlene was part of, both of them were part of the People of Colors panel for the John Mack Institute I'm a part of, that my friend Charlie and his mother, Catherine, had started. Charlene was a part of that for a while, and we interacted a little bit before that too. They grew up, they spent a lot of time in my hometown, and one of them was interacting with one of my cousins, and they have a kid. So anyway, they had a deal where they had several experiences, but one of them that they went to Mars, and they said that there were black extraterrestrials on Mars. Okay, and when taking it to like the Cydonia area and the head that's there and everything, to me that looks like it might be Olmec. And you're right, Marvin has a helmet. Excellent way to push, or excellent pointing that out. So, but interestingly enough, I think that when dealing with actually the face of Mars and the fact that it has that helmet type of Olmec type structure, might be I can't I'm trying to remember what she said, the type of black people she described, I think, a couple different species on Mars. Charlene did. And they had gotten treated really badly by a couple of interviewers a couple of times, and they kind of stepped back after that. But very good book and worth checking out. Just from the aspect of, again, it's just something else about potential melanin beings there. So from a different perspective, and I think probably they didn't get the recognition that they probably deserved. But yeah, really, really, really good call on that. Raven, is that the name of that device he was using to blow up the Earth? A big old thing he was. That's an interesting one. I'll tell you, one of the really good ones, Butterfly. I think one of his books is one of the most well-rounded. Is a Tales of Power. Tales of Power is a really good one. Yeah, and I think that's right after was it? I can remember Separate Reality. That was towards the end, wasn't it? But yeah, Tales of Power, man, that's a good one. Almost seems like almost his whole series is really encompassed in that book. Really good. Now, quickly on Castaneda, one thing about him, when you start reading what some of the women like Florinda Donner, Tasha Ablar, and the women of his group, they have some good books too. I think Florinda Donner's were really good, but they're all really good dream practices that they were taught something totally different by Don Juan. They didn't call him; they call him a whole different name. But there's another lady named Marilyn Tunashindi. Okay, and Marilyn Tunashindi had said that Castaneda was all messed up and never do the Tensgarity, because all that was giving energy back to these witches. That she said that when that book, I believe the second Ring of Power, where he's in bed with Dona Soledad and she starts choking him out, crushing him with her legs, and he couldn't get away. And he thought he was like about to die or something. she said that he never really got away from that, and he was their slave. And all his books and everything was to give those women energy. So what Marilyn Tanashindi said. Now, let me see if I can, and sure enough, I mean, he died pretty. It doesn't look like he. She said that he never jumped the abyss and all that, and she came forward on quite a bit of that. Oh, here's one. I'll just show a picture of it just to give everybody an idea. And I'm pretty sure you can still get her books. I do believe she's still alive. Or you can just look her up and see. Right there. That's a good book. But in that book, she exposed a lot of things about Castaneda, and that was put out, mind you, before he passed away. But he died under weird circumstances, and she said he's not able to do any stuff he was saying, and he never jumped off the precipice and none of that stuff. So anyway, that's very interesting. But when she describes her interactions with quote unquote Don Juan, who I believe she calls either John Black Crow or Mariano Arellano. Each one of the women in that party called him something different, which is fascinating, But anyway, that's just a good one. Look, she wrote another book too. Don Juan and Medicine Dreaming is the name of her other book. Anyway, just good ones. I think a lot of people don't know about her or really read the women's books as much. Like I said, there was this one. She was not in a line with Florinda Donner or Tasha Ablar or who's the other lady? There's one other one. Anyway, but they all have good works, but she's on kind of a different thing than they are. But enjoy those books. Yeah, they're the Butterfly. They're ones you just read again and again and get more information from them. I was especially always interested in trying. People used to go, but well, Josh, no, that's just fiction. This is fake. I said, well, maybe. I said, well, did you try any of the techniques he gave? No. I said, well, I did. And how come a lot of them yield third dimensional results? Just asking. Anyway, but people don't want to use their perception or try these things, so they don't know. And I'll say, and it's not a separate reality, but it might be Tales of Power actually, where he is given the gate of power. I practiced the gate of power, and it will stop. I didn't know because I wasn't through the series that it really stops your internal dialogue. I'm doing the gate of power, and you see that little light that's lighting up the ground. Then all of a sudden, I'm across the field. I'm sitting watching the ships start manifesting, or seeing those blue streaks in the middle of the winter. I started like tripping, man. You know what I mean? But I didn't understand how much that technique, which is really done by the great walkers, it's some sort of a technique they had to shut off the internal dialogue and walk across the Bering Strait or whatever. It's something that comes from that lineage, the old walkers. So anyway, so it's just interesting, these things that when you turn off the internal dialogue, we truly become multidimensional. It's kind of a trip. And that's just one of those techniques that doesn't. Yeah, definitely. Definitely interesting. Kaboom cereal. Can't say I had that one. Everybody's talking about Kaboom. I used to like Count Chocolate, but my mom wouldn't let me have it because she said it was representative of the black exploitation area and Blackula. Anyway, I'll tell you what, everybody, I appreciate you all being here. Thank you for putting up. It's been longer than I thought I was going to go, but hey, it's all right. Excuse me again. I appreciate you all being here. Please put a like, share the video. Let me know if you want me to do another one next week. I also been getting some suggestions. This is like turning into, I call this Chrysalis. Rise is my company, but I call this Chrysalis because this whole YouTube channel kind of shows my recovery in terms of I never wanted to get on here. I never wanted to talk. or none of the stuff. And it keeps going. There's actually people listening. So it's like me coming out of that metamorphosis, the final stage or something. So I call this like chrysalis, and I never thought of it as being like a show, but I guess it's kind of turning into that. And I'm going to quit rambling and probably maybe bring some people in here that might want to talk to me. I don't know if I'm even a good interviewer. I just get interviewed by other people. So time will tell. Thank you all for being here. Much love. And oh, yeah, I'm booking sessions again. I've tried to get back with people. I'm still behind, I know. But if you're somebody you did not hear back from me, please email me again at barrylittleton13@gmail.com. I've actually took some extra time because I changed some things that are involving the sessions, evolving them even more to where they're a little more advanced and helping people really more on point. It's about what does a session do to help your daily life. That's what's super, super important. And that's what I'm going for. So I want to make sure I had my systems really refined before I started using them and stuff like that. So anyway, hit me up, barrylittleton13@gmail.com if you want a session. I appreciate you all being here. Much love, and I will talk to you soon. Peace.